have Rosemary Fifield. She is the Co-op Director of Education and Advocacy. Good morning, Rosemary. How are you?
Good morning, Ben. I'm fine. How are you?
I am fantastic. And just so our listeners know, when I say the Co-op Director, I'm talking about the Co-op Food Stores, which are an advertiser here at WNTK and WUVR. So, Rosemary, the GMO thing's very confusing for me. And like I said, as I led up, I'm not terribly dialed into it. And that's why I reached out to you. What exactly is a GMO?
Well, as you said, they're genetically modified organisms, and what that means is it's a plant or an animal that's had its genetic material changed in a laboratory, and usually these are things that wouldn't happen in nature.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that comes up is that I get a lot of information from people. Plus, I see, I spend a lot of time in social media. This is a very active conversation in social media. Legal circles, too, there's a lot of talk about GMO. When we talk about the GMO, and Monsanto comes up pretty heavily in this discussion, that seems to be the company that people focus on. So what they're doing is, I'm assuming, is they're taking... How do I put it? Are they altering the DNA of food to make it more productive, or what are they trying to do by doing the GMO?
Well, there's a number of reasons why you might do it, and some of them sound like something that would be really great. You could make food more nutritious by basically they change the seeds, and then when the seeds grow into a plant, and mostly we're talking about plants, the idea would be it could be more nutritious, it could resist disease. They're looking at an apple that wouldn't brown after it's cut. And so there are different ways that it could benefit the consumer. However, what's really been happening is that they're using it, and it's primarily Monsanto, they're using it to sell their own herbicide called Roundup. So what they did was they took seeds, they put a bacteria into those seeds, some DNA from a bacteria, and it makes those seeds resistant to Roundup. So normally where if a farmer sprayed Roundup on his soybean field, it would kill his soybeans and all the weeds. With Roundup Ready soybeans, which is what they call it, a farmer can spray Roundup as many times as he wants, and the soybeans won't die.
Wow.
So it benefits the makers of Roundup, which is Monsanto, and it also benefits Monsanto in that when they sell these seeds, they can sell them for a pretty high price. Because, of course, for a farmer, this is more convenient.
Rosemary, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I was going to say, but it's not doing a lot for the consumer.
Right. Rosemary Fifield is the Co-op Food Stores Director of Education and Advocacy. We're talking about GMOs. Now, when we talk, one of the news stories that I picked up on, now I got to be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, and in my life, okay, this isn't my listeners, the jury's out for me on the healthiness of GMO. So I want to be clear. I'm in the middle on that aspect. What I don't like is where you went with with them making the Roundup resistant seeds, which actually on that end of it, I don't have even that much of a problem with it. Where I have a problem is some of the lawsuits. The Supreme Court's taken up a case where they basically, if I have this correct, they basically put a stamp on the DNA of the seed, so to speak. And what happens is birds, bees, wind, they don't know about these DNA stamps. Then what happens is when the bee goes over to pollinate another field that's not Monsanto product, Monsanto sues this local farmer for using their proprietary product. Am I correct on that?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what's been happening. The DNA is recognizable, and so if you have a farmer who paid for his GMO seeds, and he's growing his plants near a farmer who's chosen not to buy GMO seeds, when that pollen goes across to that other field, the farmer who didn't pay for it is now being sued for possession of GMO material, which he didn't pay for. And so that has been happening. It happens especially with things like canola, which is in the mustard family, and it just easily cross-pollinates.
Wow.
And then you have or soybeans. It's happened with that as well.
Monsanto sue the bees and the birds for illegal distribution. I think that would be the way to go. And
I'm sure if they could, they would. If they could figure out how.
Anyway, to make a buck. But when you talk about the canola, there's another issue there that we could end up with foods that by process end up with GMO that maybe that in its original form it wasn't that way because of the processing. I want to ask you about the content of when we look at food distribution or in your end the grocery stores, how much of the grain and produce that we have by percentage, rough number, are we looking at with GMOs in it?
Well, I think what you need to understand, first of all, is that processed food is your biggest problem.
Right.
Because about 80% of the processed food on a shelf, so anything in a box that has a number of ingredients, most likely has GMOs. And that's because GMOs are currently most produced in soybeans, canola, corn, and sugar beets. And it's between 90 and 95% of those products, or those crops rather, are GMO crops right now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look on a box and it says high fructose corn syrup or even artificial flavors, any of those things, xanthan gum, all that sort of thing, they're made from either soybeans or corn. So once all those mixed ingredients go together in something, you're going to find that 80% of your products, unless they're organic cannot contain GMOs. But your conventional products, 80% of them are going to have GMOs, but you aren't going to know that.
And that brings
because there is no labeling.
And I was about to say, that brings up the really, I think this is probably the most central argument or the most important argument that's central to this is the labeling issue, that when you have these GMOs, Monsanto is fighting pretty hard, as I understand, to keep people from knowing. They don't want this label that contains GMO. What would the purpose for that be?
Well, it seems that I think there's a couple of things. One is that there are polls that show that somewhere between 80 and 90% of customers, they're saying about 87% of customers, want their GMOs labeled so that they can make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And from Monsanto and the other companies, they're not the only one, and also the food companies. It's not just the seed companies. It's Coca-Cola, General Mills, Kellogg's. They don't want to put that information on a label because there's a chance you or I would choose not to purchase it if we had another choice that didn't have GMOs. So they put a lot of money. In California alone, they put in $25 million to fight GMO labeling.
Just in California?
Just in California. And that was the various companies, the big companies coming together. So the seed companies, DuPont is one of them, Bayer is another one, and then also the big food companies like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Kraft.
Wow. I'll tell you, Rosemary, I'm just about out of time, and I really I appreciate you coming on. Why don't you just real quick, I got like a minute. You are with the Co-op Food Stores. You're the Director of Education and Advocacy. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you do for the Co-op and how it relates to our customers, or to your customers?
Well, sure. Yeah, and it is all of our customers, not just our members. But my job is basically to give people enough information so that they can make informed decisions when they're shopping. So, we don't boycott and we don't tell people don't buy this and do buy that. But what my job is really to just give people information of the type that you and I just talked about, so that when they go to the grocery store, they could look at a label and say, I know what that is, I know what's in here, and I do or don't want to buy this.
That's one of the reasons I like the co-op is everything's up front. You tell everybody what's there, and they're just great stores to go to anyway. Especially your like your produce departments and things like that. You just have great departments. That's why I love the store. Rosemary, thank you for coming on Live and Local.